Namaste, everyone. It is Sahara, and welcome back to episode 3 of the Highest Self podcast. I am so excited to have you here and to share a little bit more about me, more than the Instagram captions and blog posts will allow me. And since I'm your host on this show, I thought it would be a really great place to kind of start off with my own journey of how I discovered Ayurveda, what my own journey to health was, just so you can get to know a little bit about the perspective that you're hearing from. So, to make a long story short, I was born 9 pounds. Growing up, I've always known that I was put on this earth to help people. That was one thing I've always been sure about. The only confusing part was just how. So as a child, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to work with this, that. I ended up going to school to become an international human rights lawyer to specialize in child advocacy. So child labor, child trafficking, child sexual abuse, things like that. I went to George Washington University in DC. I was in the Elliott School of International Affairs, which is like a wonderful international affairs program. And I started working in the summer at different nonprofit organizations, helping with immigrants and refugees. And I realized upon working at these places that it was not the right fit for me. Since I was young, I've been traveling the world by myself with NGOs, volunteering, building orphanages, teaching in schools, working in slums. So that part I loved, but I hated the bureaucracy that came with the nonprofit sector. I didn't want to raise money for the next fundraiser. I didn't want to spend my days looking at spreadsheets. I wanted to be out there on the field helping people. I wanted to see their faces and feel them. There are different types of learners. I'm a very kinetic learner. I need to feel things to really experience them. And for me, being so far apart from the people that I was helping was not enough for my soul. So I was really confused and actually became depressed in college because this thing that I had spent my whole life wanting to be an international human rights lawyer was no longer vibing with my energy, and I couldn't deny it. I just could not imagine myself going through court cases and the whole law school system. And I didn't even agree with so many of the laws in place. I didn't feel like the UN was doing enough to help people. I wanted to be there. So I thought I would join the Peace Corps and just spend a few years traveling. But obviously my family felt like I need a stable job. I can't just keep traveling and then what? So I was really at a loss for what I was going to do. And for me, that depression manifested as just not eating. I wouldn't eat for a day at a time. And the weird part about it, if anyone's ever experienced an eating disorder, is you feel really proud of yourself. So even though I had lost control over this whole aspect of what am I going to do with my life, I gained control over feeling proud of myself for not eating. And I remember I told my roommate in college, I'm like, oh my God, all I ate today were samples at the farmer's market. And being like, great job. And I don't know, it's really twisted that it was something that I was proud of. And that shows that there's something in your mind that's going on. And eating disorders comes from a vata imbalance, too much wind, but it was just too much not knowing what to do, too much flow, too much movement. It became a tornado. And the only thing that I had control over was the food that I put into my mouth. And then from there, it shifted into just being obsessed with what I ate. I became a raw vegan after, because that was just kind of the next thing I could do to really watch after what I ate. So I was just eating a lot of smoothies and salads, and I found myself constantly hungry and constantly thinking about food. And if you've ever been on a diet, you'll know that all you can think about is food. And I would spend my afternoons on Pinterest looking at food porn, literally, brownies and ice cream and things that I would never, ever eat. But I would just stare at their pictures because my body was so hungry that just looking at it became satisfying to me. As I was a raw vegan, my health began to deteriorate, and I was living in Boston. I transferred from GW after my depression to BU. In Boston, my family lived there, and I was figuring out what it is I wanted to do. I continued studying international relations, but I decided to start a blog about, all the food that I found on Pinterest. And I was 19, 20 years old. People weren't blogging that much back then. So it was kind of like a weird thing to do, actually, and I didn't really want to tell people. But I figured I will share the recipes that I make from Pinterest, and it can just be a little like side hobby thing. Never expecting it to go anywhere. And I was looking for jobs to work in like the beauty industry. I thought it would be awesome to work for like a cosmetic company and I was always just looking for a way to travel. Like, oh, I want to move to Dubai. Oh, I need to go visit these shamans in Ecuador. I was always looking for an escape because I was not truly happy with where I was. So I began this blog literally in a day. I was like, what am I going to call it? Oh, Eat Feel Fresh. That sounds cool. Called it Eat Feel Fresh, made it, Googled how to start a blog, saw blogger.com, started that blog, and it became a hobby for me. Over time, I became kind of obsessed with it, just like I was about my food, but I became obsessed with posting. How can I get it to look good? How can I increase traffic? It was like my little blog baby. And I'm sure if you guys have started a blog, you know how exciting it feels, and it literally becomes like your child. So I was like researching ways to like get traffic on it, and I saw that Pinterest was a really good way. So I created all these like pinnables, and I was joining other people's pins and group boards, and I was pinning it and constantly posting, like every day writing a new blog post that like I would be hanging out with friends and just on my computer working on my blog. And back then it was a mostly raw vegan blog. I had sort of shifted away from raw vegan, but it was definitely very vegan. And then someone on Pinterest, still don't know who reposted one of my articles called The 1 Week Detox, and it went viral. And I suddenly started to get millions of hits on my little blogger website. And it was so weird to me because I was like, oh my God, they're here. They're ready. They've come. It was sort of like when the guests arrive and you're like, oh, they're here. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? So I'm like, okay, well, they're really into this like 1 week detox thing. So I'm going to write like so much more about detox. I'm going to be like the detox specialist. And then that article became like the number one thing on Google, that when you would Google the 1 week detox, it was the number one thing that came up. And it lasted there for a few years, actually. I don't even know. I think I deleted that article actually. But, so I became like, okay, detoxing is my thing. And then, juice cleanses, how can you detox your body? And like, again, the whole notion that you have to detox your body means that you are filled with toxins, which is not true. The body naturally detoxes itself every single day. Every 90 days, our body totally eliminates all toxins from our system. So the idea that we need to like just drink juices to detox our body is just a self-harming one, especially if you come from an eating disorder background. So I was doing that for some time, and people around me were like, you look really thin. I'm like, oh, thanks. Cool. And they're like, no, like too thin. I'm like, really? And growing up, I was never the thin girl. I was always the chubby girl. I was like born, as I mentioned, 9 pounds, but I was just always like a chubby kid growing up. Weight was like always like a hard time for me. It was the first time anyone's ever called me too thin. I was born with a lot of kapha in my prakriti, which is the doshic constitution that I was born with. Kapha is the earth energy. So I sort of at first took it as a compliment, and then over time I just kept getting it from people. But you know how people can be, sometimes it can be like this like double-edged sword, like, oh, you're so thin, you're probably anorexic. Oh, I'd love to see you eat those fries, and like just really hurtful things that people say to others. And especially if someone does have an eating disorder, to like be like, come on, eat that bread. Why aren't you eating that bread? What's wrong with you? How can you survive without carbs? That's probably the most harmful thing that you can do. But that's what I was getting from my friends, from my family, from so many people. And it was just making me feel worse. And, if you feel like you need to fix yourself, and someone telling you that you're even more broken is just going to make you go deeper into your hole. But what they were saying, part of it was true, that I definitely was too thin. And I continued on this diet, but knowing that something was wrong, I stopped menstruating for like a year. I got off birth control and my period didn't come back. I was extremely cold all the time. Not normal amounts of cold, but like frigid, down to the bones cold. I grew up in Boston, so for me to be cold there says a lot. I was sleeping with 2 layers of wool socks on. I was just shivering constantly. I couldn't even just like wear a skirt or something. I needed so many layers on me. And I would exercise. All I would do was cardio. And then I remember one time at the gym, I just started to get so dizzy. and I had to lie down. I lied down where I like fell asleep for some time. I felt like I had to throw up, and I like went to the bathroom and I fell asleep in the toilet again. Like my body was literally shutting down. And I wasn't listening. I was like, oh, guess I worked out too hard, not thinking, oh, well, maybe if you don't eat at all and you're like 90 pounds, that can happen. So at that time, I had been traveling to India, and I was volunteering in the slums in India, teaching health, sanitation, and things like that. And I decided it would be a really cool experience for me to visit an Ayurvedic doctor. At that time, while I was in college, after I started the blog, I also enrolled in the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, which is like the world's largest nutrition school. It's an online school, a year-long program, which I highly recommend. If anyone has any questions on that, you can definitely let me know. And I also have discount codes available to have $500 off any program as an ambassador for them. At IIN, Institute of Integrative Nutrition, I heard about Ayurveda. I love quizzes. I love personality quizzes, getting to know your mind, your body. I'm all about that sort of stuff. So I loved how it was like a health system that began with a quiz. Like that was super cool to me. So when I took their quiz, I saw like I was like 100% Vata. I had all the symptoms: cold, underweight, low period, low energy, all of the things. So I decided I would visit this Ayurvedic doctor and see what she had to say. I was never considering even taking her advice, to be honest. Sorry if you're listening. But it was just sort of like a thing that you did when you go to a place. So I go to the Ayurvedic doctor and she asks me, so what do you eat? What are your dreams like? What is your period like? Like all of these questions. I'm like, I eat salads, not getting my period, barely sleeping, all of the things that are like Vata, 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 Vata. So she was like, okay, well, 100% your Vata imbalance. I was like, okay, so like, what do I do? She's like, well, you have to stop eating all raw foods. You have to eat lots of rice with ghee, which is clarified butter, and dal, lentils, all cooked foods. Even drink ghee in the morning when you wake up. She gave me cups of ghee to drink. And if I don't follow these suggestions, I was at risk for infertility, for osteoporosis, and even for cognitive diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So that was like getting hit in the head with like a can of bricks or whatever that expression is. But that was a serious wake-up call for me because, you know, I knew that what I was doing was probably not the best, but my fear of gaining weight made me keep on doing it. But to hear that I was actually putting my body in a long-term health risk for like the immediate desire to just be skinny and like look good in clothes, that was like a whoa moment of like, who's going to remember how I looked in this BCBG dress when I have osteoporosis and can't like walk? Like, imagine if I can't have kids one day because what I'm trying to do here. And it showed me just how serious it is. And especially when you're young, you are creating the foundation of your body that's going to last you for the rest of your life. And if you're not nourishing your bones when you're in your teens and in your 20s, I'm sorry, they're not going to magically grow in your 50s and 60s when you need them most. So the fact that I was in such a Vata imbalance at such a young age was extremely scary. So the only thing is, the suggestions she gave me were totally anti everything that I was all about. I ate raw foods. This was all cooked foods. I was a vegan. She wanted me to eat ghee. She even wanted me to eat meat because Ayurveda is not a strictly vegetarian diet. If you have a severe imbalance that your body needs life by eating meat, then it's honoring the circle of life because you are giving yourself life by taking life. So I was even supposed to eat meat. It was going against everything that I was so strongly for. And, you know, a lot of times when you eat a certain way, and I see this a lot with the vegan community, which I was in for many years, it becomes an ideology. And I wasn't willing to look at the other sides. I was just saying, well, this is the right way to do it. Raw vegan food is the only way. Your food's dead. My food's alive. I became even a superiority complex because when the ego is tied in with the way you are eating, it says, I'm right, you are wrong. And that should not be part of any diet. So I was really confused because I wanted to follow her suggestions. I knew what she was saying had accuracy to it, but I didn't want to give up the way I was eating. So I kind of ignored it. And I ignored it for a few months until my back was hurting so bad that I couldn't even practice yoga some of the time. My hips would literally come out of the socket. All of the things that she was telling me were beginning to come true. It had been over a year, no period in sight. My hair was falling out. I used to have very thick hair. It became extremely thin. I looked gaunt. Looking back on pictures of that, I'm like, wow, like no wonder people were telling me I was so skinny. There are some people who are naturally really skinny and some people that are. I'm not someone that naturally is 90 pounds, and that's how much I weighed. And I'm 5'4". So it definitely was a time of severe imbalance in my life. So I decided I was going to take some of her suggestions, but integrate them in my own modern way. So she told me I needed to eat more cooked foods. So I decided I was going to cook all of my greens. I would still eat my kale and my spinach and this and that, but I would cook them. And the one Indian recipe that I really loved was palak paneer, which is like a spinach curry. It's basically you cook spinach and then you blend it. So it's almost like a hot green smoothie. And you typically add paneer, which is cheese, but I would add tofu to it. So every single day in India, I ate that every single day. And I brought my own quinoa, and instead of rice, I would have quinoa. And just from that switch, I started to feel so much better. And not just in my body, but also in my mind. I've always been a night owl, and I still am, but I was finally able to sleep soundly throughout the night without waking up and like having to pee like 5 times and just thinking about things all the time. I became so much more grounded. So I saw, wow, well, just from doing that, I already feel so much better. Imagine if I start following some of the other things she has to say. So I began to visit her and learn from her. And I decided to study one-on-one under her. And we created an Ayurvedic nutrition and cooking program that I just did single-sidedly alongside the doctor, who's a female. And she taught me so many things about Ayurveda. She spoke to me about the doshas and the way that they impact our digestive system and our physiology, and like ways that you can notice them in other people and even in children. And it was like I was just learning this language, as I mentioned, that I spoke 1,000 lifetimes, and it just made so much sense to me. But at the same time, there were a lot of things that I disagreed with, and there were a lot of things that I would say, well, that doesn't make sense. And it was so different from what I had learned about before. Like, how can cooking foods make it more nutritious? Doesn't it kill its living enzymes? Like, there were so many things that Ayurveda opposed with, especially from the raw vegan diet, but also just the way that Westerners eat. But they had a reason for everything. And a lot of it, it's not a strictly scientific reason, it's an energetic reason. So it opened my mind to looking at food in a whole new way of not just macronutrients and calories and what is its effect on your metabolism, but like what is its energy? And if you are lacking in grounding, how can you gain that from the ingredients that you put into your body? So I learned that root vegetables have grounding energy because they're literally grown under the ground. And the sprouts that they have that go deep into the soil, when you consume those, that's like putting roots into your own body, making you feel much more grounded, stable, and supported, which is what I needed. I needed to increase my kapha again. And I learned that certain foods are airy and they evoke feelings of vata, of movement, of windness. And those foods are leafy greens and berries and just things that are light and flowing and cold in nature, which was basically 100% of my diet. So I learned that my dosha became so imbalanced from vata because I was eating essentially a pure vata-inducing diet. So it was incredible to see that how much the foods that we eat truly influence how we feel. And it was coincidentally that my blog that I had already started a few years before at this point was called Eat, Feel Fresh. So it was like my soul knew like I needed to learn this lesson. And that's how that name came through me. So I continued studying Ayurveda for about 2 years. I went down to Kerala, which is where kind of like the hometown of Ayurveda. Ayurveda started in northern India. When the British rule came, they said Ayurvedic was barbaric and they no longer allowed it to be the leading medical practice of India. That used to be the medical system there. But when the British came, they instead enforced Western medical system, and Ayurveda went underground. And when it went underground, it found its safe haven in southern India in a town called Kerala, which was a beautiful beach town, coconuts everywhere. And now Ayurveda is the main thing in Kerala. People go to Kerala for Ayurvedic Panchakarma sessions and things like that. So I went to Somathiram, which is the world's oldest Panchakarma center, which was freaking intense. Did Panchakarma there. I went down to Goa. I found an Ayurvedic healer that I would learn from. I was just hungry for knowledge. I read so many books. I was going back to Delhi to learn with that doctor, just doing as much as I could to really immerse myself in this ancient wisdom in the home country where it's from. And I truly don't believe I would have gotten the same education if I had studied anywhere but India. Because in India, I wasn't just going to Ayurveda class and like coming back to my life. I was living and breathing the system. I had a yoga teacher that would come to my house every day and teach me Ashtanga, and we would fast every day, and I would learn about, the gods and the goddesses. And I was just so fully immersed in this culture that I have lived so many lives as. And my family's from Iran. They're not Indian, but ever since I was young, I have been Indian. Like when I was young, I remember I visited Iran, my family there, and they asked my parents, they're like, why does your daughter have an Indian accent? They're like, what? They're like, yeah, she talks an Indian accent. They're like, I don't know. But and I look extremely Indian. Everything about me is Indian. So it was amazing to go back there and revisit my people essentially and be like, yes, this is how we lived our lives for so many years. And I was just so happy to be back home. And I'll talk more about how you can know about your past lives and places that you just feel so comfortable and innate. Those are probably places that you've lived past lives. For me, I literally understand Hindi. I can watch a Bollywood movie and know everything going on. A lot of it is the same as Farsi, very similar words, but it's past life recognition. So studied Ayurveda, and while I was studying it, I felt extremely called to write a book sharing this Ayurvedic wisdom in modern applicable terms. And I talked more about this in, I think, the first episode, but I wrote that book, spent years writing it, went against all odds, went through a lot of chaos and confusion, got the book done, looking for a publisher, and then eventually got the book deal for the Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda, which is the official Idiot's Guide, which is going to be out on August 8th this summer. So freaking excited. So basically, the reason that I'm sharing this story with you is so you know that my mess 100% is my message. I would not have cared about health and nutrition and well-being and mind-body balance if I didn't have to learn these lessons for myself. I had to undergo imbalance, eating disorders, confusion, digestive issues. I visited so many gastrointestinal doctors because when I started eating normal food again, everything hurt my stomach so badly that I simply couldn't eat. I've tried being paleo and keto and everything under the sun, and food has always been a huge obstacle for me. So that's why that mess became my message. I recently graduated from Matthew Kenny Culinary School studying raw foods. You can see on my Instagram the creations there. So I'm no longer bound by food. I'm no longer obsessed with its nutritional value and this and that. There are plenty of days, every single day, I will eat a bar of chocolate. For me, that brings me happiness. That keeps me in my state of flow. And that's a non-negotiable. And it's taken me a lot to not feel guilty about that. I've seen that, yes, it's so important to be healthy, but it's just our physical body at the end of the day. And if we stress and spend all of our times focused on our physical body, we can never transcend into our highest selves. And I see so many people, especially in the fitness community, that obsess. I see in these fitness competitions, it's all about what does your physical body look like on that show day. And they starve themselves. They ruin their digestive systems, their metabolisms for years to come, to calculate your percentage of body fat so someone else can judge you and tell you that you are worthy enough. And And that's not just going on in fitness competition. That's going on every single day with all of us. And that's something that I really want to step away from. And for me, food is nourishment, food is joy, food is community, food is health, food is medicine, food is art, food is all of these things. So I don't want to define it as just one thing of just, well, I'm just going to eat broccoli and chicken because it's going to give me a six pack, or, oh, I'm just going to eat cookies because they taste really good. It's all about finding your balance. And some days that balance is going to be like lots of salad because that's what you just need. And other days it's going to be no salad and a bagel because that's what you need. And I think we should respect both of those decisions. And another thing that I love about making your own food is that you can make healthier versions of that. So before, when I was extremely restrictive of my diet, I wouldn't even try to make like the healthy like paleo breads and desserts and stuff because I was like, no, it's just going to lead me to eating normal bread and I can't. And again, it was my food fear that was keeping me from trying these new creative recipes. And then once I tried it, I'm like, darn, this is like super good. And now I'm able to eat a piece of the paleo bread or have like a cookie with coconut sugar or whatever and just feel no guilt about it, not have to think about it because we waste so many of our precious brain resources stressing about food. Oh my God. Like imagine if you could just have all of the time back that you've spent thinking about like, is this going to make me fat? Is this good for my body? How many macros does this have? Blah, blah, blah. Like imagine if you could just have that all back and like write a CD. I don't know, write a book, do anything with it. You could have become Picasso with all of the time that you've spent stressing about your food, how much you've worked out, and what your body looks like. And I truly believe that that's why the media in the past has put this upon women, because as women, if all we are concerned about is looking good and impressing others, which actually is really just impressing other women because the men don't care, then that keeps us from actually achieving what we were meant to do on this planet. So I really feel like these restrictions were placed upon us to keep women below. They were placed upon women to say, oh, well, you got to go work out. You got to do this and you got to do that. Because then if men spent all of the time that we focused on their physical appearance, they would not be, climbing the corporate ladder and this and that. So now that we have entered this feminine Aquarian age where the energy has shifted from the patriarchal masculine to the not even matriarchal, but just like for everyone, and it's a more feminine era of flow and everyone's at the same level, let's let go of that. Women need to look a certain way. Women should be judged. Women should look like this and smell like that and da-da-da. Let's let that all stay in the patriarchal era and let's not bring it with us anymore because it's not serving us. As much as I am a nutritionist, in this path, I became a holistic health coach, a sports nutritionist, and an Ayurvedic practitioner. And as much as I truly believe in the healing powers of food, and I see it every single day with my clients, I always tell them, what is your purpose of health? Is it so you can, play with your kids? Is it so you can start your own business? Is it so you can just be your highest version of yourself? Or is it just so you can have slim legs? And they all know it's not for the slim legs. It's not for this. Maybe at the beginning it is because their ego tells them, I will be happy once I have a thigh gap. I will be happy once I can fit into a size 4 dress. But it's actually not about that. Losing weight is losing part of yourself that you want to let go of. And it's healthy to an extent. If you are overweight, which many kaphas are, they're holding on to a lot of things. They're holding on to baggage. We store emotions on our physical bodies. So kaphas store a lot of emotional dramas, stress, tension, all of these things, and it manifests as body fat, and they carry it with them everywhere that they go. And also, if you have ever been abused or traumatized, you often end up eating to create a protective layer around yourself because you feel like it is not safe to just be you. So a lot of women, when they've been, sexually abused or something as a child or raped, they end up overeating afterwards to say, well, maybe if I was fat, I wouldn't have gotten that kind of attention. So it takes releasing those thought patterns, because when you're able to face that side of you and say, no, it is safe for me to be here. I don't have to have this protective wall around me. I can just be as I am. And then that's how the weight just naturally slips off without ever having to try a diet again, because you're no longer in this cycle of self-sabotage. I've ended up kind of specializing in women with eating disorders because I've experienced it and I've seen it with so many people. I really believe almost every woman in the United States has had some sort of eating disorder. It could have been orthorexia, which is obsession with healthy eating. It could have been anorexia, which is not eating enough. Could have been binge eating, which is overeating. Can be anything in between. Purging is another really big one, when you throw up your food. And again, it's trying to lose something, trying to cleanse yourself from something, saying, oh, like I'm dirty. I need to get this out of me. So I always like to look at what is the subconscious message underneath your eating disorder, underneath your relationship with food. And to me, once you're able to kind of hit that nail on the head, it naturally just goes away. So where I am in my journey now is spreading the messages of Ayurveda. My book is going to be out this summer. I have my 12-week program, which is on my website, eatfeelfresh.com. It guides you step by step through how to integrate Ayurvedic wisdom into your lifestyle in a way that's just attainable. So it starts with getting to know your mind-body type. What's the best breakfast for you? Then lunch, then dinner, and then it goes into understanding the doshas and the sub-doshas and the dual doshas and the right workouts for you, water, all of these things, grocery shopping list, meal plans. It's basically everything that I wish I had when I began my journey. And I basically created it as like a platform, again, for myself. If I even have something that I forget, I go back and I look at the program because there's just so much information in there. So that program's on my website on eatfeelfresh.com. If you just look at the top, it says 12-week program and you can see it there. As my book comes out, I wanted to be a tool for people to know that food is just one part of the equation. It is not the end goal. There is no medal that you get for having the best digestion. There's no race for the metabolisms. At the end of the day, it's just the gas in your car. It's just the fuel in your tank. And the question is, where are you going to go with it? I'd love for you to take a moment, take a night, take a week to think about that and think about why is it that you want to eat healthy? Where is this energy going to go? And if you're not eating healthy, why is that? Why are you trying to sabotage yourself? What is underneath the eating disorder? If it's overeating, why don't you feel happy with where you are? Why don't you feel fulfilled that you need food to fill you? If it's undereating, what areas of your life do you not feel control? And how can you regain control so you can let go of the need to control every morsel of food that you put into your mouth? If it's purging, what are you trying to cleanse yourself from? What part of you do you need to look at and love more? And if it's orthorexia, where does this need for perfection come from? Whose approval are you looking for? And once you have it, what does it even mean? It all begins with self-love. When we love ourselves, we don't allow ourselves to get into these states. Because when our ego starts saying, no, restrict this or eat more or do this or do that, our soul says, no, girl, I'm protecting this one. So all of those parts of you that you think are not enough, I want you to love so deeply. Whether it's your stomach or your legs or your traumas, I want you to love them because they are part of you. And I don't want you to love them because you think it's a way of letting them go. because that's not really loving them. I want you to love them because they've been given to you for a reason. And they are the obstacle that has been placed before you to help you get higher on your path. And the moment you truly begin loving those parts of you wholeheartedly, you'll see the reality around you will instantly shift. Trust me, I've seen it myself, and I'm still working on it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I have a private Facebook group called Mind Body Balancers. I will put the link in the show notes, and I would love for you to join that, and we can take the discussion further there. And in the meantime, I'm on Instagram at EatFeelFresh. My website's eatfeelfresh.com. If you've never taken my quiz, so you have no idea what these doshas and mind-body types are, I have a free quiz that you can take on Eat Feel Fresh, and it will give you a breakdown of your mind and body type. It gives you the percentage of each dosha in your mind and in your body and explains what that even is all about. And the 12-week program is also there. And after you've taken the quiz, you receive a discount for the program. So I really encourage you to do that. If you've taken the quiz and you want to learn more about the program or get the discount, you can always contact me. So thank you again so much for tuning in. I love you guys so much, and I'll speak to you on the next episode. Namaste.